I'm sorry, sir, that game is rated M.
No problem, I have ID.
This is a calzone zone frequent calzone eater's card.
There's a free calzone in it for you.
This never happened.
Welcome to MojoPlays, and today we're reliving the top 100 PS2 games broken down by genre. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos.
I took the liberty of relieving you of your weapons. Most of them were government property. As for the suit, I think you've earned it.
The Operative. No one lives forever.
I'm not very happy, you know. It's not like I thought it would be.
I never promised it would be as exhilarating as your former trade, only that it would keep you out of jail and make it easier to sleep at night.
There may never be another GoldenEye 007, but on PS2, gamers got the next best thing with the Operative No One Lives Forever. Borrowing not only the title of one of the many James Bond books, No One Lives Forever also tells the story of a British secret agent named Kate Archer in the 1960s and uses the time period to full extent with over-the-top outfits and pseudo-futuristic gadgets straight out of the Bond franchise. Instead of all-out action and gunplay, the game focuses on stealth and clever use of gadgets as Kate attempts to stop whatever world-dominating plans the evil organization HARM may be plotting. The series received multiple sequels, but the original No One Lives Forever was sadly the only one ported to consoles.
Drop your gun.
Or what? Are you gonna shoot me in cold blood?
If I have to.
That's mighty tough talk for a little girl.
13. Ignoring the abysmal recent remake, 13 remains a classic for its cel-shaded comic book style and presentation that is one of the few forms of media to faithfully bring the pages of the comic it's based on to life. Following an amnesiac spy who was blamed for the assassination of the US president, David Duchovny's charmingly monotonous tone brought the character of 13 to life. The text popping up as the player nailed headshots or the word boom quite literally erupting from explosions immersed the player in the pages of the comic book the game was based on. The title received mostly mixed reviews and poor sales killed any possibility of a sequel, but the game has become a cult classic, and its stylish comic book aesthetic has more than helped it stand the test of time.
You magnificent son of a bitch.
You okay, Wally?
Is it really over?
You bet your ass.
Area 51. Over the years, countless properties have had players facing down the aliens, whether they're invading us, we're invading them, or we just happen to encounter them out in the vastness of space, but few have truly tapped into the potential of the top secret base Area 51. A pseudo-remake of the light gun game of the same name, Area 51 puts players, oddly enough, in the military boots of David Duchovny once again, as he and his team are sent in to clean up a mutant virus outbreak. The title is chock full of government conspiracies, shocking revelations, and unlikely allies, as well as a surprisingly star-studded voice cast, even featuring the likes of Marilyn Manson. Besides the normal military artillery, the player is infected with a mutagen and gains supernatural abilities to survive the invading alien forces.
Your caution is correct. The dark forces have begun to gather. The countdown to ascension has begun.
Battlefield 2 Modern Combat. There was once a time when the Battlefield name stood for outstanding quality with state-of-the-art graphics and precision gameplay. While those days are seemingly behind us for the time being, the PS2 managed to get one of the best entries in the once lauded franchise this side of bad company and laid the groundwork for what the series would become in the coming years. Whereas many other first-person shooters still focused on the run-and-gun style of gameplay, Battlefield focused on slower, more tactical encounters, while still offering gamers the choice to go in guns blazing, despite the odds being stacked against this option. Many of the modes now familiar to not only Battlefield, but multiplayer first-person shooters in general, the landscape of both console FPSs and multiplayer offerings would look very different without Battlefield 2. Killzone.
On this day, we stand united once more. On this day, those driven to divide us will hear our voice. On this day, we shall act as one.
While it might not have been quite the Halo killer Sony was hoping for, Guerrilla still managed to deliver a solid first-person shooter experience that eventually became a well-respected franchise that boasted one of the best multiplayer modes that still hasn't been duplicated since. Nowadays, the original Killzone is looked back on with a bit more appreciation for what it accomplished on the limited hardware of the time. Despite the more cinematic presentation than other shooters of the time, technical hiccups and poor AI held the game back from mainstream appeal until its far more popular sequels came along. However, even despite the limitations, the gameplay remains remarkably solid, and the Hollywood-caliber sound design helps bring the irradiated landscape of the Helgen Wars to life.
10 seconds to launch. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Black. When the creators of the Burnout series decided to apply what they brought to the racing genre to first-person shooters, it definitely garnered some attention. With the goal in mind to bring Hollywood-caliber action to console shooters, Black features some of the most impressive, for the time, destruction as well as all-out bullet hell mayhem and sound effects that could blow out many standard TV speakers. Black did for the first-person shooter genre what Michael Bay did for action movies. The story itself might have been complete nonsense, but it served its purpose of setting up the next action set piece for players to blow to shreds with a hail of thunderous gunfire. Thankfully, this one-off by the studio has been ported to modern consoles as well, so now new players can experience the cacophony of carnage and bullet hell that Black offers. Medal of Honor Frontline. The Medal of Honor series might be no more nowadays, but back on the PS1 and PS2, the series was the pinnacle of World War II first-person combat. And while both systems saw numerous releases over the years, the benchmark of the series was undoubtedly its first entry on the PS2, Medal of Honor Frontline. While it didn't make huge changes to its tried and true formula established by previous entries, Frontline nailed every aspect of its combat, objectives-based gameplay, and atmosphere better than any other entry. Storming the opening Normandy level remains an exhilaratingly haunting experience even today, and while many subsequent entries attempted to match this level of immersion, none managed to even come close. Call of Duty might be the reigning champ of first-person shooters these days, but for a time, Medal of Honor represented the best of what console shooters had to offer.
I couldn't have expected half the results you achieved. So, take some much-needed R&R, but rest assured we'll be calling on you soon.
Red Faction.
Mars. I always thought of it as a romantic place, a planet of mystery and adventure.
How is it with all the advancements in video game engines over the years, we've actually ended up with less destructible environments? In the early days of the PS2, destructible environments and terrain were barely a consideration due to hardware limitations, but the team at Volition and their Geomod engine proved it was not only possible, but it was a hell of a good time too. The ability to take out bridges, walls, and quite literally tunnel in any direction if you had enough explosives was revolutionary for the time, and is still a marvel even 2 decades later. Despite the Total Recall-esque plot tying everything together, the series proved popular enough to span a series of sequels, but sadly the Geomod technology was never utilized outside of the Red Faction series, and there hasn't been a proper entry in the franchise since 2011.
What are you gonna do?
Who knows? I won't be staying on Mars, that's for sure.
Half-Life. Half-Life is undoubtedly one of the most important and influential shooters of all time, with its influence still being felt in the first-person shooter genre even today. The story of Gordon Freeman and the Black Mesa facility dealing with the fallout of an interdimensional incident and the iconic G-Man remains one of the highest-rated games of all time. While Half-Life has been ported almost as many times as Skyrim, until the recent Black Mesa, the PS2 version was the definitive version of the beloved game, featuring not only updated and smoother graphics, but also tweaks and improvements to level design. If you hadn't had the chance to play Half-Life during its initial release on PC, those on the home console actually had the chance to play the best version there was.
Time to choose. Wisely done, Mr. Freeman.
Time Splitters 2.
For they have taken their evil war into our past. Traveling through time, they have sown corruption, unraveling the fabric of our history.
The original Time Splitters was a launch title for the PS2 and was a wonderful proof of concept with its inventive character designs and time-hopping objectives, but Time Splitters 2 was where the series truly found its footing. Featuring a much more fleshed out and detailed storyline, as well as more levels to explore, and each taking place in a new time period, the sequel improved on its predecessor in every way imaginable. One of the standout multiplayer experiences on consoles, thanks in large part to a majority of the dev team having also worked on GoldenEye 007, Time Splitters 2 hit a bar that even its follow-up Future Perfect couldn't match. The series maintains a loyal fan base, and with rumors of the series making a comeback, there's no better time to be a loyal Time Splitters fan.
Time to get out of here.
Listen to my story. This may be our last chance.
Xenosaga, Episodes 1 through 3. Admittedly, we're cheating with this entry by including all 3 games of the Xenosaga series in one, but considering all 3 are necessary to get the complete story, we're gonna let it slide because it's our list and we get to make the rules.
Understand? The algorithms I have been programmed with do not support the comprehension of illogical human thought.
A spiritual successor to Xenogears and a precursor to Xenoblade Chronicles, Xenosaga tackled many of the same serious issues present in its predecessors, such as religion, commentary on humanity's place in the universe, as well as the rise of AI and machines. The story of Cosmos and humanity's expansion into the universe and their fight against the Gnosis for control of a godlike artifact called Zohar offers a refreshingly mature take on the conventional RPG storytelling. Originally planned as a 6-part series, Xenosaga was instead cut in half, but still managed to complete its story arc, albeit a bit more abruptly than originally planned.
All systems clear.
Tales of Symphonia. The Tales series is one of the longest-running RPG series in gaming, and while it may not reach the same heights of popularity as the Final Fantasy series, it still has a loyal fanbase. Arguably, one of the most beloved titles in the long-running franchise is Tales of Symphonia, and with its anime-inspired art style and its easy-to-learn, tough-to-master free-flow combat that requires players to think a bit more strategically than other more traditional RPGs, it's easy to understand why. The game's themes of symphony play into the story as well, as actions that Lloyd and his companions make in his world can affect another parallel world and can have dire consequences for both. Tales of Symphonia remains the benchmark for the series, and while there have been other equally beloved entries in the franchise, this is the one that made the series what it is today.
It looks like it is over.
Shadow Heart's Covenant. Set in an alternate history World War I full of secret cults and Lovecraftian horrors, Shadow Hearts Covenant earns its spot on our list just for setting and premise alone. However, the game's unique setting wasn't enough, and Covenant had to one-up itself by implementing one of the most intriguing combat systems in any RPG with the Judgment Wheel. In order to use any attacks, spells, or items, the player must land on that section of the wheel, and missing the area can risk canceling their turn entirely. This system keeps battles frenetic and unpredictable due to one missed wheel turn completely upending a well-planned strategy or combo. Coupled with a sanity meter and the late game ability to turn into one of numerous monstrosities, Covenant's mature themes and dark Lovecraftian overtones still has fans demanding a sequel even today.
That's as much as I can remember.
Dragon Quest VIII: Journey of the Cursed King.
Ah, so this is what all the fuss was about.
As the inspiration for the arguably more popular Final Fantasy series, Dragon Quest still has a rabid fanbase that eagerly awaits any news of future projects in the franchise. The first fully 3D entry, Dragon Quest VIII doesn't stray too far from the familiar RPG format that made it a mainstay in the industry, and it doesn't need to since it created the template to begin with. Everything from its beautiful art style, courtesy of Akira Toriyama, to the compelling story and wonderfully symphonic music, everything comes together perfectly to create one of the best entries in the franchise that birthed the RPG genre and remains one of the best-selling and well-received RPGs on the PlayStation 2, hands down.
When you all set off so bravely, we decided it was time we did the same. So, perhaps you could fill us in.
Rogue Galaxy.
Hey, wait a minute! I haven't decided yet!
Oh, you'll be there, all right. I can see it in your eyes. You were made for the pirate life.
Planet-hopping RPGs might be more common nowadays, but on the PS2, they were almost unheard of. However, that didn't stop Level 5 from creating one of their most ambitious RPGs on the PS2. What begins with a simple setup quickly becomes a galaxy-spanning adventure full of planet-hopping space pirates and an evil that threatens the entire galaxy. In addition to its ambitious story, Level 5 carried over much of what made its Dark Cloud series such a success, including real-time combat and a focus on crafting and leveling up your weapons rather than your character. Equally impressive was the tech under the hood, as the entire game featured 0 loading screens, which was a technical marvel back in the days of the PS2. Rogue Galaxy has since been ported to modern consoles, so if you haven't already, you owe it to yourself to take a trip into the stars.
If you get a chance, could you tell them all about the wonders of civilization for me, would ya?
Baldur's Gate: Dark Alliance. Dungeons & Dragons has had no shortage of video game adaptations over the years, and out of all of them, the Baldur's Gate series is the one most highly regarded and synonymous with the tabletop RPG. Foregoing the turn-based combat of many other adaptations, Dark Alliance uses its hack-and-slash combat to keep players constantly engaged in battle, running the many calculations and dice rolls off-screen so players never need to worry about anything beyond the many creatures right in front of them. The addition of couch co-op gave fans of Diablo a console-friendly version of the dungeon-crawling RPG, and its straightforward approach to the often complicated tabletop game brought in many new fans who would have never known it was something everyone could enjoy. Dark Cloud 2.
This was the beginning of a real adventure.
Level 5's follow-up to their first ever game managed to not only build on everything that made the first title great, but also expand on the mechanics and create an all-encompassing RPG that still puts many modern RPGs to shame with its breadth of content. Tasked with rebuilding the world, players must battle through randomly generated dungeons to collect geostones and rebuild the destroyed villages, while also contending with the many requests of the rescued villagers for a better version of their hometowns. Along with a new art style also came the implementation of time travel that allowed players to travel to the future to see the fruits of their efforts, that makes the many battles they faced in their quests all the more rewarding. It's a shame the series hasn't continued, as we'd love to see how Level 5 could have improved on the series even further.
The outside world. Right then, my heart was filled with expectation, wondering what kind of places I would find.
Kingdom Hearts 2.
You're lucky.
Looks like my summer vacation is over.
The original Kingdom Hearts was a concept that shouldn't have worked as well as it did. Combining elements of Final Fantasy games with beloved Disney properties sounds like a fever dream, but ended up being the start of a franchise with a legion of fans still trying to decipher its overarching plot today. Kingdom Hearts 2 streamlined everything fans loved about the first game and improved upon it. Combat was faster, the story was much easier to follow, there was more diversity in the worlds you visited, Donald was useful, and the much maligned gummy ship sections were actually fun. Square Enix even tapped into the coveted Disney Vault and allowed players to explore the worlds of Steamboat Willie and Tron. Kingdom Hearts 2 improved on nearly every aspect and remains many fans' favorite entry in this increasingly convoluted series.
Sora, Donald, Goofy, you guys are too much. If you're ever in the mood for some more cosmic razzle-dazzle, give me a shout, okay?
Final Fantasy X.
It all begins here.
The first entry in the long-running franchise on the PS2, every new Final Fantasy game was an event, but there was something different about Final Fantasy X's release. Thankfully, Final Fantasy X more than met the hype and made some huge leaps for the franchise going forward. The first Final Fantasy title to feature voice acting, as we've said, for better or worse, fully voiced characters added an extra level of depth to their struggles. As opposed to simply reading about their pain and frustrations, now you could hear it. Final Fantasy X was also the first entry to use fully 3D backgrounds, bringing more life to the world as Tidus and his companions openly explored the vast and vibrant landscape. Final Fantasy X marked a turning point for the franchise that every future entry has built upon, but at its core, this is the best and most accessible title for new and old fans alike. Persona 4.
That's the way, Senpai! Well done! Do some more damage! Go, Senpai!
Yes, believe it or not, Persona 4 released on the PS2 almost a full 2 years into the PS3's lifecycle. While many experienced the title on Sony's PS Vita, longtime series fans eagerly dusted off their PS2s for what some would argue is the best entry in the franchise. Arguably one of the most stylistic RPGs on the market, Persona 4 just oozes charm with its instantly likable characters living their day-to-day lives, going to class and building friendships, all while investigating a series of murders connected to the TV world. You would think that living out the daily lives of school children would grow tiresome, but the clever writing and numerous twists and turns in the narrative kept players engaged and constantly guessing until the very end. Persona 4 has been re-released numerous times with extra content, and has even seen multiple spin-offs including rhythm and fighting games.
Thank you very much. You're really kind, Sensei. I'll try even harder from now on.
You stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Batman Begins.
Batman's coming. Find the nigga. He's real.
Batman, kill him!
Although it would be completely overshadowed by Batman Arkham Asylum only a couple years later, there is still quite a lot to appreciate about the Batman Begins video game, and much of what made the Arkham games so iconic, particularly the use of stealth and fear takedowns, is present here as well. By using many of Batman's iconic gadgets, players can intimidate the many enemies in their way with environmental distractions, raising their fear level and making them much easier to subdue. While the combat wasn't at the same level as the Arkham games, and frankly what is, the game is still a standout for its production values and getting nearly the entire cast of the film to reprise their roles. Batman Begins even featured a drivable Batmobile a full decade before Rocksteady.
What? What the hell are you? I'm Batman.
The Punisher.
The rats can hold a little funeral of their own.
For a character seemingly perfectly designed for video games, it's strange that the vengeful, gun-toting anti-hero has had so few outings in gaming. Loosely based on the 2005 movie of the same name, and featuring Thomas Jane reprising his role as Frank Castle, The Punisher made a name for itself with its over-the-top gunplay, executions, and interrogations mechanics. Using the game's environments, Frank can convince his enemies to cooperate and give up the information he needs. Originally branded with the dreaded adults-only rating due to these coercion mechanics, the developers of Volition took a page out of Quentin Tarantino's playbook and made the more graphic scenes black and white to skirt the censors. Although the rest of the game was your standard third-person shooter, these clever innovations helped the Punisher score bullseye with fans. From Russia with Love.
Who are you?
The name is Bond. James Bond.
When it comes to video games, Bond doesn't have quite the same success rate he does with the ladies. For every GoldenEye, there's a 007 Legends. From Russia with Love managed to fall into the former category and delivered a solid Bond video game based on one of the most iconic films in the long-running franchise, and even managed to bring back the OG Bond himself, Sean Connery, for one last go as the famous 00. Due to legal reasons, Spectre is now Octopus, but the title still managed to hit many of the most important aspects of the classic film's storyline, allowing players to use Bond's wealth of gadgets, firearms, vehicles, and even good old fisticuffs to bring down Octopus before it can carry out its nefarious plans. Grab a shaken, not stirred martini and enjoy one of Bond's greatest adventures in film and gaming.
James, now that it's over, I hope you don't find me disappointing.
I'll let you know in the morning.
The Matrix: Path of Neo.
Have you ever had a dream you were so sure was real?
All of the entries on our list seek to recreate the worlds of the films they're based on. The Path of Neo takes things a step further and was actually written and directed by the series' creators, the Wachowskis themselves. Recounting the events of the original trilogy of films, players become the One and are finally given control of Neo and all the bullet time powers that come with him. Along with a revamped martial arts engine and Neo's aforementioned bullet time and acrobatic abilities, players are also presented with choices where the outcome can differ from the film entirely. And while the end of the trilogy was marred in deep melodrama about the nature of destiny and the choices we make, the Path of Neo lets you battle a skyscraper-sized Agent Smith. So there's that too. Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets.
Ron! Ron! Where are you? Over here, Harry! The Whooping Willow's got me! Don't worry, Ron! I'll come and get you! Just hold on! I can't do anything else!
Until the likes of Hogwarts Legacy finally releases, Chamber of Secrets is the closest we may ever come to actually attending Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. While the game still follows closely to the movie it's based on, and does an admirable job maintaining the lighthearted nature of Chris Columbus's early films in the franchise, it also manages to pull content from the source material and let players explore sections from the novel not realized in the film. In between major story beats, players will attend classes to learn spells and also take their broomstick out for an open flight around the castle grounds, making the world feel all the more realized as players get more freedom than ever to explore the world of Harry Potter. Hagrid was also thankfully given an upgrade as well from his PS1 counterpart.
And as for Harry, well, once again, he truly was the boy who lived.
The Thing.
Hold it! Pierce, it's Blake. It's okay. Put your weapon down.
No way. You're infected just like all the others.
I'm not.
Your word ain't shit, Captain.
While many games on this list are faithful adaptations of their source material, The Thing is the only one that can be considered a canonical sequel. After a US Special Forces team is sent to Antarctica to uncover what happened to the research team stationed there, players once again encounter the titular thing and must manage not only resources in the harsh, frigid landscape, but also their team's trust and morale, or else they'll turn on one another, suspecting everyone to be one of the aliens in disguise. Maintaining your team's trust is only half the challenge, as each member has a specific skill necessary to make progress into certain areas, or heal team members after a battle. The Thing video game answered questions players had after the conclusion of John Carpenter's 1982 classic, such as what happens to MacReady after the end of the movie. Here's a hint: it's not good.
So what's your name, smartass?
McCready. R.J. McCready. U.S. Outpost North 31.
Spider-Man 2.
Watch out!
Parker.
The impact of Spider-Man 2 on all the wall crawlers' adventures after this 2004 movie adaptation cannot be understated. Not only did the title revolutionize Spidey's swinging mechanics for generations to come, it also expanded on the narrative of the movie, allowing players to take on members of Spidey's rogues gallery not in the movie, such as Vulture and Mysterio. However, it was definitely Spidey's swinging that helped this title rise above not only its predecessor, but also tie-in games in general. Webs needed actual surfaces to stick to in order for Spider-Man to swing around, making traversal far more realistic. And with numerous side activities to take part in, such as pizza deliveries, random crimes, and saving a child's balloon — look, not all of them can be winners — there was no shortage of things to do while Spidey effortlessly swung between the skyscrapers of an enormous New York City map.
After all, there's still only one Spider-Man.
Peter Jackson's King Kong, the official game of the movie. Beyond one of the most unnecessarily long titles for a movie adaptation, no one does movie-to-game tie-ins like Peter Jackson, as you'll see later on our list. Not only innovative for the dual perspectives where players take control of both leading man Jack and the titular Kong himself, the game featured no HUD whatsoever, and players had to rely on Jack counting the number of bullets left, or become part of the jungle's circle of life. Switching between the powerhouse Kong and the lowly human Jack attempting to survive the jungle consistently felt more like an interactive version of the film more than any other adaptations. Impressively cinematic to match its film counterpart, there was also an unlockable alternate ending in which players can save Kong from the attacking planes when he's atop the Empire State Building and eventually send him back to Skull Island. The Warriors.
Can you dig it?
Remember back when Rockstar used to make games other than Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption? Wild times, we know. While no one's first pick for an adaptation, the movie had come out over 25 years ago by the time of release, no one could have predicted it would end up being not only one of Rockstar's best titles, but also one of the best film-to-game adaptations ever. Featuring some impressive and balanced combat mechanics far above anything Grand Theft Auto had at the time, and expanding on a nearly one-to-one retelling of the classic film, as well as managing to recruit many of the actors back to reprise their roles for the game, the Warriors went above and beyond and managed to recapture the feel and atmosphere of its source material in ways that have yet to be replicated even today.
Warriors, come out to play. Warriors, come out to play.
The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King.
Who enters my domain?
One who would hold you to your oath.
The dead do not suffer the living to pass.
Although some would argue the Two Towers adaptation is the superior title, we have to give the nod to The Return of the King for expanding on the film upon which it is based, with more playable characters and better environmental interactions. Rather than retelling the entire movie like most tie-in games, Return of the King sought to let players relive some of the film's most important moments with them in full control. Whether battling at the gates of Mordor or climbing to the top of Mount Doom, the open level design and game's attention to detail is spot on when compared to its film counterpart. Its gauntlet-style hack-and-slash gameplay is deeply rewarding and engaging. A clear labor of love for the films, they just don't make them like this anymore, and possibly never will again.
I don't have an axe big enough for this one.
Behold! The dead have come to save the living! This party's getting crazy. Let's rock.
Guitar Hero. Before Nintendo taught us how to play with their Wii, this was the party game. Guitar Hero was a revelation amongst music rhythm game fans and newcomers alike, and spawned a phenomenon that led to an overwhelming number of sequels and spin-offs that all started on the PS2. While Guitar Hero 2 is where the series truly hit the mainstream due to its multi-platform release, you would have been hard-pressed not to find a copy of Guitar Hero and its plastic guitar peripheral alongside any PS2 owner's collection. The simplicity of its controls and literal pick-up-and-play nature made it one of the best games for you and a group of friends to put all that time playing air guitar into real-world practice, and it was an absolute blast. Gran Turismo 3 A-Spec. The Gran Turismo series was always the pinnacle of real-life simulation racing ever since its debut on the PS1, but with Gran Turismo 3 A-Spec, Polyphony Digital crafted what is considered by some to be their magnum opus of the franchise. While the number of cars was significantly less than in Gran Turismo 2, what was on offer more than made up for the lack of options. With 180 cars, 19 tracks, and numerous high-performance vehicles to choose from, and numerous challenges associated with each, fans of the series had a lot to get their engines going. Gran Turismo 3 also substantially bumped up the detail of each track and vehicle thanks to the increased power of the PS2, making it one of the best-looking racers on the console throughout the entirety of the PS2's lifecycle. To date, Gran Turismo 3 remains the highest-rated entry in the long-running franchise. Ratchet & Clank, up your arsenal.
This guy's your biggest fan.
That is rather disturbing.
There's no shortage of great action platformers on the PS2, but the Ratchet & Clank series managed to not only stand out due to its inventive weaponry, but also has managed to stand the test of time and become one of Sony's biggest IPs that remains ongoing even 2 decades later. However, even with all the newer iterations and modern upgrades to the familiar formula, Up Your Arsenal is still considered the benchmark for the series. Everything from its variety of weapons, level design, character arcs, and hilarious script were all pitch perfect, and Insomniac even saw fit to include a pretty robust multiplayer mode as well.
I believe some congratulations are in order. After all, my plan worked even more perfectly than expected. Well?
Way to go, dude?
Kingdom Hearts 2.
Outside! Sounds like we gotta start by helping out here.
We've said it before, but Kingdom Hearts is a series that by all accounts shouldn't work as well as it does. The original Kingdom Hearts instantly endeared itself to fans of both Disney and Final Fantasy, and its sequel only improved on the groundwork laid by the first title. The combat was snappier and allowed for greater customization and combo building, the companion AI was vastly improved, the narrative was much easier to follow this time around, for the most part, and the boss fights and worlds you encountered are still some of the most iconic in the series and lifted straight from the Disney Vault itself. There are now 13 games in the series, but the franchise's second entry is undoubtedly the one most beloved by fans.
What? Oh, no, don't even worry about that. That's just real technical, just for us Guardians.
You tricked us!
No.
Metal Gear Solid 3: Snake Eater.
Ha! Ah! Ah! Ah!
Never underestimate Hideo Kojima and his ability to one-up himself. After the immensely impressive but divisive Metal Gear Solid 2, Kojima let fans finally play as Snake like they had always wanted. Sort of. A prequel detailing the origins of Big Boss himself, Kojima took the genre he created and took it to a primitive level, forcing Naked Snake to constantly change his camo to blend in, hunt wild game for health, and even tend to wounds sustained during battle. This might not have been the Snake players were expecting to play as, but it was still very much a Metal Gear Solid title, and Kojima ended up crafting one of his best and most cohesive narratives to date, packing his trademark double crosses and plot twists amongst some of the most emotional gut punches in the entire series.
She was a real hero. She was a true patriot.
Persona 3.
You can't plug your ears and cover your eyes. And so it begins.
The Persona and Shin Megami series already had their fans from their days back on the PS1, but Persona 3 is where the series finally found its mainstream audience. The mix of day-to-day life of a high school student and battling the shadows of the dark hour by night resonated with gamers who wanted a more traditional JRPG and fans of life simulation titles. There continues to be an ongoing argument about whether the third or fourth entry is best, but Persona 3 marked a turning point for the series and proved to be so popular it spawned numerous spin-offs and sequels and made it a household name amongst gamers.
This is gonna be a fun year. I can feel it.
Devil May Cry 3: Dante's Awakening.
It's showtime. Come on.
The original Devil May Cry was the shot of adrenaline the action genre needed to kickstart the PS2, and while the sequel definitely killed the series' momentum, Dante's third entry took things back to the beginning for the Demon Hunter and once again revitalized not only the genre, but the franchise's brand as well. Dante's Awakening gave players a younger and even cockier Dante and a more cohesive story that focused on the rivalry between him and his brother Virgil. Everything about Dante's Awakening just clicked. The playgrounds were larger, the weapon options were better and punchier, and the over-the-top nature of the series was solidified and helped Dante regain his title as the most badass demon hunter in gaming.
I love this. This is what I live for! I'm absolutely crazy about it!
Final Fantasy X.
This is my story. It'll go the way I want it, or I'll end it here.
Final Fantasy XII could have easily taken this spot, but we decided to focus on 10 due to its popularity and impact on the long-running series. By the time Final Fantasy X released on the PS2, the series had become synonymous with PlayStation, and just like Final Fantasy VII before it, Final Fantasy X made the PS2 a must-have system for not just Final Fantasy fans, but fans of JRPGs as well. The astounding graphical leap from 9 to 10 was unprecedented, as well as the addition of voice acting, which brought more weight to the interactions between characters, as well as one of the best love stories the series has ever told. Final Fantasy X might not have broken the mold when it came to the series' iconic turn-based battles, but everything around it was a staggering upgrade.
You knew this was gonna happen, didn't you?
Yes.
Why didn't you tell us?
If I had told you the truth, would that really have stopped you from coming?
Shadow of the Colossus. While both Echo and Shadow of the Colossus are undeniably iconic PS2 classics, Shadow of the Colossus gains the edge due to its brilliant gameplay design and masterful art direction. Shadow of the Colossus took the concept of impressive spectacle boss fights and made it their central mechanic of the entire game. These giants can often be found peacefully minding their own business until the player comes along, and each one presents its own challenge as players need to discover either the quickest way to the top or how to trap said Colossus to finally bring them down. For a game with virtually no dialogue, it's a testament to the game's spectacular direction that it's also one of the most emotional roller coaster rides on the PS2, and remains one of the landmark titles for the argument that games should be viewed as works of art. God of War 2.
Do you see, gods of Olympus? Do you need more proof than this?
When Kratos burst onto the gaming scene in 2005 with his Chaos Blades, his quest for revenge and no-nonsense attitude instantly made him an icon as the angriest protagonist in gaming. God of War 2 built upon this initial premise and managed to make Kratos even angrier as his betrayal at the hands of the gods spurred him into initiating their eradication from the Greek pantheon. The weapon selection was more diverse, the action was more visceral, the environments were far more varied and detailed, and the boss fights were some of the biggest in gaming at the time, and the over-the-top nature of these encounters easily made God of War 2 one of the best action games on the PS2.
Zeus, your son has returned! I bring the destruction of Olympus!
Total Overdose, a gunslinger's tale in Mexico. Something many open worlds nowadays take for granted is the fun factor of being set loose in a giant sandbox to cause all manner of chaos. And that's exactly what Total Overdose accomplishes in spades. Not concerned with realism whatsoever, Total Overdose feels like an early playable Robert Rodriguez movie with outlandish gunfights and ridiculously impractical moves that simply look cool. While it might not have had the expansive cityscapes of the GTA series, the fictionalized version of Mexico was well realized, and players had no shortage of environments to explore using any number of vehicles they could get their hands on. Sometimes all a game needs to do is set players loose in a world to make their own fun, and that's exactly what Total Overdose sets out to do.
That was breathtaking. I didn't know you had it in you. Risky, but very exciting.
Smuggler's Run 2.
Where we will be dropping crates throughout the area for you to pick up. You must locate them and deliver them.
Seems pretty routine. What do you know that I don't?
The original Smuggler's Run was a launch title for the PS2, and at the time, featured some of the largest environments many gamers had ever experienced up to that point. With Smuggler's Run 2, everything was bigger, faster, and more aggressive as players attempted to grab their contraband and escape not only Border Patrol, but also other smugglers as well. Although developed by Rockstar, Smuggler's Run 2 had more in common with the Twisted Metal series than GTA, as players sent one of their numerous vehicles careening around the environment, narrowly missing capture and losing their payload. At the time, few games let the player just drive as recklessly as they wanted without serious consequence, and Smuggler's Run 2 gave players a much bigger and far more varied playground than its predecessor in which to put the pedal to the metal and drive into the sunset as fast as they could.
You did great! This should take care of everything! You deserve it! I'll see you around, kid! Hey! You stay out of trouble!
The Incredible Hulk, Ultimate Destruction.
My name is Bruce Banner, and this is me.
I'm not a person anymore. I'm the Hulk. I did this to myself.
If you're going to build a game around comics' biggest lean, green fighting machine, you better build a world that can handle him. And Radical Entertainment created a near fully destructible world and set the Jolly Green Giant loose in a playground all his own. Utilizing all the best attributes of the Hulk's unparalleled power, players could leap incredible distances, run up the sides of buildings, and use the many objects and vehicles in the environment to cause even further destruction. The Incredible Hulk was set loose in a variety of biomes, each fully explorable in between missions with various side activities to engage in, all which feed back into increasing the Hulk's abilities so he can cause even more destruction. Never before had a game allowed the Hulk to be fully unleashed, and gamers loved every rage-induced moment of it. SSX3.
You can't ride without the tunes. You know what I'm saying? Check it out.
You wouldn't normally associate an open world with a sports title, but after the runaway success of SSX Tricky, developers at EA Vancouver needed to up the ante and gave players an entire mountain on which to shred. With 3 peaks to unlock with increasingly difficult objectives and races, the progression of climbing to the summit managed to perfectly coincide with the player's own abilities in the game without becoming a grind. Once fully unlocked, players could ride from the top all the way to the bottom in an exhilarating ride that could take them through everything from ice caverns to glistening cities built into the side of the mountain. Although more recent titles have attempted to do the same, none have managed to capture the feeling of the ice-cold wind and the snow beneath your board as you get tricky with it down the slopes and conquer the mountain. Shadow of the Colossus. Sometimes an open world doesn't need to be filled with constant activities or objectives to complete to be memorable. Sometimes it's the quieter moments that can be the most impactful. Such is the case with Shadow of the Colossus and its vast, empty landscape that's presented to wander from the start of the game. While you might not be able to freely take on each Colossus as you choose, it's the journey to each new enormous beast and the time to reflect on your last encounter that makes those long, quiet rides resonate with players in a way that many louder and more over-the-top open-world games fail to recapture. That's not to say the world is bland by any means, quite the opposite in fact. And it's those moments where you crest a hill and see a new crumbling structure or the shadow of your next challenge that can easily take your breath away. Spider-Man 2.
What is this garbage? Why are you bringing me shots of the city and not shots of Spider-Man? This is the sorriest excuse for... Oh, wait a second. Robbie wanted these, didn't he? Yeah, they're fine. Now get out of my office!
With great power comes a great world to explore. The city of New York is just as much a character as the friendly neighborhood wall-crawler himself, and after numerous attempts to fully encapsulate being Spider-Man, Treyarch managed to do the impossible and not only give players a fully realized New York City to explore, but made them feel like they were Spider-Man. Unlike previous outings for the webhead, Spidey had the near entirety of New York fully open to him to swing about to his heart's content, rescuing civilians and taking on the baddies all the way from the city streets to the rooftops above. Treyarch even expanded on the story from the film, allowing Spidey to cross paths with fan-favorite characters like Black Cat and Mysterio, and giving players more areas to explore than any other Spider-Man title up to that point.
After all, there's still only one. Spider-Man.
Bully.
I've got a good feeling about you, boy. A feeling you and I are going to be great friends. You keep that nose clean, boy, or I shall clean it myself.
Most gamers use video games as an escape from the real world, whether that be work or school. but Rockstar managed to make going to school fun again. While attending Bulworth Academy, you'll still be expected to attend classes and complete your assignments, but it's the moments in between where the game truly shines. Jimmy has access to any number of ways to explore the grounds of the academy as well as the nearby town, and rising through the ranks of the numerous cliques and groups through increasingly outlandish pranks and activities bring the world to life just as much as its over-the-top characters. Bully managed to not only be fun and engaging throughout, even while you attended the mandatory classes, but also laid the groundwork for Rockstar's future games by creating one of their first truly living, breathing worlds players could fully immerse themselves in.
Okay, man, now you're kind of creeping me out.
Why does everyone say that to me?
The Simpsons Hit and Run.
Homie, Lisa left for school without her science project. Can you get it to her?
Oh, do I have to?
You can drop it off on the way to work.
And I have to go to work?
The iconic family of The Simpsons are no strangers to chasing video game trends, having tried their hand at everything from wrestling to skateboarding and even taxi services. But it was in combining The Simpsons with the now industry standard GTA formula that the family truly found their place. With a fully open world Springfield to explore, complete with all the series' beloved characters to interact with and locations to visit, this was every lifelong Springfieldian's dream come true. Along with a hilarious script from the show's creators, as well as a full voice cast reprising their roles, every corner hid some piece of trivia or nod for longtime fans to appreciate and relentlessly track down. Say what you will about the quality of the Simpsons series after over 3 decades, but there's no denying that this was one of the best ways to experience not only the iconic family, but their beloved Springfield as well.
Imagine that, scared of some harmless nuclear waste. So very harmless. Oh, cut your fingernails!
The Getaway.
She does some wet jobs. Charlie says they never see it coming from a bird.
What? She's a topper?
Oh yeah, mate. She's not the slightest bit squeamish about a bit of claret.
Although video games today are known for their detailed recreation of real-world locations, back on the PS2, this type of thing was unprecedented. While not a one-to-one recreation of London, the level of detail Team Soho was able to create on Sony's second console was unmatched at the time. Seeking to give players the most immersive and cinematic feeling ever created in a video game at the time, The Getaway featured no traditional HUD whatsoever, instead giving players directional indicators to their next objective using their vehicle's turn signals. Also, unlike GTA 3 only a year earlier, The Getaway featured real-world vehicles from well-known manufacturers such as Lexus and Fiat. The Getaway sought to recreate the look and feel of popular British gangster movies such as Snatch, and although The Getaway wasn't the runaway success GTA was, there's no denying the sheer technical achievement Team Soho managed to accomplish in only the PS2's second year. Grand Theft Auto Trilogy.
We gotta get our stuff and get out of here!
Relax, both of you. Let me think for a second. Tommy Vercetti just doesn't cut and run.
Undeniably the series that changed open-world games forever, we couldn't choose just one from the trilogy that redefined the open-world formula, so we're including them all in one entry. Each iteration built on the one before it, and the fact that Rockstar managed to develop and release all 3 expansive games within the span of 3 years makes this feat even more impressive when you consider just how much detail went into each entry and how each one was more ambitious than the last. Honestly, you'd be hard-pressed to choose one over the others, from 3's humble beginnings and memorable world, to Vice City's atmosphere and characters, and the sheer scale and customization options available in San Andreas. The series has something for everyone. Everything that today's gamers love about the iconic series started here and began the deluge of copycat games trying desperately to chase the formula that Rockstar perfected.
Ooh, everything is different now.
What is it?
Everything. They will call this Year Zero.
Woo!
I love a fast woman.
Shut up!
SOCOM 2, U.S. Navy SEALs. While the genre is primarily dominated by the Tom Clancy license nowadays, for tactical, militaristic gameplay, there was no better option than the SOCOM series, and SOCOM 2 remains the benchmark for the franchise. While the title has a full story campaign, many players were drawn to the multiplayer options and the ability to play online with their friends. Within the world of SOCOM, players had to think more tactically than their standard third-person shooter, and in particular rely on their allies during multiplayer skirmishes, although you could always opt for the full Rambo approach, but unlike other tactical shooters, this one would punish that type of gameplay outside of scripted story sections. Red Dead Revolver.
What the hell are you looking at? Fill 'em full of lead.
John Marston and Arthur Morgan owe a debt to Red Harlow, for without him, there would be no redemption to their names. Taking inspiration from Sergio Leone's Man with No Name trilogy, Red Dead Revolver originally started production with Capcom before moving over to Rockstar Games, and while not as lore or feature heavy as Rockstar's future entries in the series, Red Harlow's quest for revenge for the death of his parents still introduced many of the themes and mechanics the Red Dead Redemption series would become known for, especially the Deadeye targeting system. Players were also routinely given control of some of Red's companions in specific missions, each with their own playstyle and signature weapon. The game may feel a bit dated by today's standards, but is still one of the best Western experiences on the PS2, and an important milestone that started one of the biggest franchises in gaming.
Anything you want? What do you say, partner?
Max Payne 2, The Fall of Max Payne.
An echo of the past, an old monster snapping its eyes open in the depths of my brain. Closing your eyes forces you to look at the darkness inside.
The first outing for Max Payne was unlike any shooter gamers had experienced at the time. A gritty noir story punctuated by some of the best third-person shooter gameplay the console had seen, and the addition of bullet time was just the icing on the cake. In the sequel, not only do gamers get to check back in on Max, but also his new femme fatale companion, Mona. The comic book style cutscenes and Max's overall dramatic delivery of the game's storyline put gamers in the shoes of the tragic detective as he once again fights his way through multiple levels of corruption, shooting his way to the top of the ladder. Max had some additional training between games and could now fire weapons at multiple targets at once, all while using the game's signature bullet time mechanic, empowering players to get creative with every encounter.
One last thing left to do. I was compelled to give Vlad his gun back. One bullet at a time.
Mercenaries, Playground of Destruction. The PS2 had no shortage of games that just set the player loose within its world to cause all manner of untold destruction, but few gave players an arsenal to bring with them the way Mercenaries Playground of Destruction did. And what a playground it was. Building off the GTA formula, Mercenaries allowed players to tackle missions in any order they choose, hijack any vehicle, and lay waste to any building or outpost that stood in their way. It was like all those times you spawned a tank into GTA, but could actually do some damage with it. With multiple factions you also need to maintain favor with, all within the confines of an ongoing conflict, there was never a better time to be a mercenary than on the PS2.
Hey there, mercenary. I gotta admit I was wrong about you. Okay, so you make a mess, but if that's what it takes, it's a price I'm willing to pay.
Grand Theft Auto San Andreas.
You picked the wrong house, fool!
Hey, Big Smoke! It's me, Carl! Chill!
Back when Rockstar was capable of making more than 2 games in 10 years, gamers were spoiled for choice and had multiple titles to choose from to explore in a series that redefined the open world genre. within 3 years' time, Rockstar managed to continuously build and perfect the formula that would be replicated across the industry, and at the time, their benchmark was in a trip to San Andreas. Players were given one of the series' largest sandbox to play in at the time, and could even customize their character, giving them different hairstyles and body types, all of which would be represented in the game's numerous cutscenes. San Andreas not only acted as a swan song for the series on the PS2, but arguably was also the last truly outlandish and over-the-top adventure before the series took a more serious turn.
I'll have 2 number 9s, a number 9 large, a number 6 with extra dip, a number 7, 2 number 45s, 1 with cheese, and a large soda.
Tomb Raider Anniversary.
I find it is love alone who remains untainted by academic dogma and open-minded enough to see this truth.
The Tomb Raider series is as iconic as PlayStation itself, launching not only a bunch of fanboys through puberty early, but also skyrocketing Lara Croft to the top of gaming iconography with the likes of Sonic, Mario, and Crash Bandicoot. After taking over the reins from series creators Core Design, Crystal Dynamics had the unenviable task of bringing Lara Croft into the era of modern gaming after the abysmal Angel of Darkness put the series on hiatus. So, taking things back to the beginning, Crystal Dynamics decided to update Lara's first adventure, and the results were nothing short of remarkable. Technically only a generation apart, the quality of life improvements, particularly the 3D camera, made this the best way to experience the birth of Lara's adventures, as well as breathe new life into a series that was quickly becoming outpaced by another PlayStation treasure hunter. Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty.
Come on, time to go. If you run out of ammo, you can have mine.
You got enough?
Absolutely. Infinite ammo.
While Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater might arguably be the better game, we have to give the nod to Sons of Liberty for the ability to lean further into the action side of tactical espionage action than Snake Eater did. Although not recommended, you technically could make it through the entirety of Metal Gear Solid 2 playing it like an action shooter, and the game will adapt and respond in kind, sending near endless waves of faceless enemies for you to systematically annihilate. The game's narrative also plays better into this playstyle than 3, with more action movie-centric set pieces lending themselves well to the gung-ho militaristic shooter aspect of the title. Plus, you can choose to play Snake as stealthy in the opening section, and Raiden as a gun-toting sociopath. Resident Evil 4. Just as the original Resident Evil birthed an entirely new genre of gaming, so too did Resident Evil 4 revolutionize not only the RE series itself, but also left a significant mark on the entire industry that is still felt today. The switch from the static camera to the over-the-shoulder perspective was revolutionary and became a staple of every third-person shooter from that moment on. While sidelining much of the series as iconic horror in favor for one-liners and roundhouse kicks, Resident Evil 4 managed to stay true to the basis of its roots, but put the focus squarely on the player having the absolute best time possible while headshotting and suplexing the Las Plagas with a much more confident and able-bodied Leon.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
Devil May Cry 3: Dante's Awakening.
I can already tell. Looks like this is gonna be one hell of a party!
The Devil May Cry series epitomizes everything the action video game genre is about. Silky smooth combat, classic one-liners, an overconfident and overpowered protagonist, and larger-than-life encounters with equally over-the-top boss fights. The original Devil May Cry game birthed an entirely new genre of action spectacle, and Dante's Awakening was undoubtedly not only one of Dante's best outings, but also one of the best action games for adrenaline junkies on the PS2. The weapons were more diverse, and the action was somehow even more over the top and in your face than thought possible, and the younger and cockier Dante was just what the series needed after the Demon Hunter's disappointing second outing. There's a reason the Devil May Cry series is so lauded by action fans, and Dante's Awakening reawakened the series into the action juggernaut it is even today.
I love this. This is what I live for. I'm absolutely crazy about it!
God of War 2.
You will pay for this, Zeus. Be certain of that.
While Dante might have the spectacle, Kratos brings the rage to action games, and as angry as he was in the original God of War, that's nothing compared to his newfound quest for revenge in God of War 2. Whereas Dante's story plays secondary to the action, the God of War series manages to blend the two seamlessly, allowing players to exact Kratos' revenge, all while sympathizing with his motivations. The fact that Kratos tends to go above and beyond what's called for in his quest for revenge certainly doesn't hurt either. With bigger areas and landscapes, as well as more useful secondary weapons, Kratos' arsenal grew as much as his anger and took him and the player to some of the most distinct and varied locations the series had seen, and subsequently brought many of them crumbling to the ground with energetic glee.
I have lived in the shadow of the gods for long enough. The time of the gods has come to an end.
Oh yeah, I bet you didn't see that one coming. Hey, what are you doing?
Check and mate.
What? That's cheating!
The Simpsons game.
I mean, I died a lot, and I mean a lot, but it's not like I have limited number of lives. Infinite lives? Then how is a game even hard? What's the point if you can just play forever?
The world I grew up in is gone.
Despite innumerable video games starring The Simpsons, you certainly can't accuse them of not fully committing every time. For what was unfortunately the famous family's last major video game outing, they decided to go full meta and let the family in on the joke, telling them early on they were taking part in a video game about their adventures. While not a fully open world Springfield like Hit and Run, the many worlds and homages to popular video game franchises were wonderfully detailed and oozing with that classic Simpsons knowing humor. Each family member has their own super abilities depending on the fantastical world they're visiting. The family crosses paths with everyone from their creator to the creator of all, and defeats God in a Dance Dance Revolution style minigame. Like we said, classically Simpsons.
Daddy? Someone's looking at me!
Ape Escape 2.
It's a delicate machine, so be careful not to overload it.
Natalie! I sent the professor's stuff okay! Huh?
While the first Ape Escape game was a surprisingly solid title that also acted as a tech demo for Sony's new DualShock controller, by the time the sequel was released, the novelty of twin analog sticks had worn off, and Ape Escape 2 needed to up the ante. Thankfully, Japan's studio was more than capable of rising to the challenge. With those monkeys once again up to no good, it's up to Hikaru and his trusty net to once again track them down and recapture them. This time he's aided by new gadgets such as the Bananarang and improved mechanics that make catching those tricky monkeys more fun than ever. Some brand new minigames also offered a well-deserved break in between all the monkey madness.
Oh no, not again! My laboratory!
Hi, I'm home!
iNinja.
What have I done? Master, you're dead.
Your grasp of the obvious astounds.
It wasn't my fault.
As was, and still is, the case with many platformers, there are so many that manage to steal the spotlight that some of the best can sneak right past you. See what I did there? Because ninjas. Possibly due to its confusing naming or release window, iNinja, despite being one of the most solid platforming games on the PS2, was overlooked by many. even with all its numerous wall running, swordplay, and ever-shifting gameplay mechanics managing to keep players engaged from beginning to end. Foregoing the usual ancient China setting for a more contemporary time period, the titular ninja battles his way through unending waves of robots and mechanical menaces as he attempts to undo a grave mistake made early in the game. An impressive cast that included the likes of Billy West and a surprisingly hilarious script, Ninja's adventures take him out of the shadows and challenges all who consider themselves to be a true ninja.
Cut the chit-chat, Gramps. With time, you will learn more lessons. You know, journeys like this usually lead to mastery.
SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom.
So, okay is the magic wishing word?
It used to be Alakazama Alabala Wiesna Tikitana Fushbar Griddle Bits von Wiederschnauzer, but I kept forgetting it.
Are you sure this'll work?
By the time Battle for Bikini Bottom released, the curious yellow sponge had had no shortage of nautical gaming adventures, many of them in full 3D. Battle for Bikini Bottom took everything fans loved about the optimistic and porous anthropomorphized sponge and put his greatest adventure at their fingertips. Nearly all of Bikini Bottom was here for players to explore, from the shores of Goo Lagoon to Rock Bottom, lovingly recreated just as longtime fans remembered. And the game even took a Metroidvania-style approach to many levels, with numerous off-the-beaten-path discoveries just waiting for different playable characters to unlock. Although SpongeBob has had numerous other adventures in the years since, it's only recently that Battle for Bikini Bottom was forced to wave the white flag.
That's the most hideous thing I've ever seen!
Wait, that hideous thing looks like me!
I always knew SpongeBob would be the death of me!
Maximo Ghosts to Glory.
Boom. What, not afraid of death?
There are worse things than death.
True, true. Things like that.
Platformers are generally viewed as a more laid-back genre in gaming, but a few manage to up the challenge and make players lean forward to focus, such as Maximo Ghosts to Glory, a 3D reimagining of the classic Ghosts and Goblins franchise on the NES, known for its challenging gameplay bordering on punishing. Much like the original classic, Maximo must navigate dangerous worlds all in pursuit of his kidnapped queen. Also like the original, Maximo's health is represented in the number of layers he's wearing, going from a full suit of armor right down to his skivvies. Unlike the punishing original, however, Maximo can buy himself a way out of death due to a deal made with the Grim Reaper, and if Maximo has the coin, his adventures continue. It's often difficult to bring older titles into the modern era, but Maximo managed to once again bring himself back from the dead.
Hey, you did say you owe me one. Right, buddy?
Okay.
Rayman 2 Revolution.
Incredible! I can feel its energy building up in me. Oh, my fist is back to full strength!
Nowadays, remakes and remasters are commonplace, but back on the PS2, they were unheard of. Rayman 2 Revolution is a remake of the sequel to Rayman's original 3D outing on the PS1, and was remade as a launch title for the PS2, but also including new areas to explore and challenging new bosses for the limbless hero to contend with. Revolution also opened up the world much more than its original incarnation, allowing players to more freely explore the environments, and also added new powers, cutscenes, and dialogue to help further flesh out one of Rayman's last great 3D adventures before being overshadowed by those damn rabbits.
Follow me, my friend.
Sly 2 Band of Thieves.
Sounds like fun. You and me, back to back?
Totally. Outnumbered, fighting impossible odds. It's perfect.
All right, pal. Let's get to it.
While most 3D platformers are focused on the numerous ways to double jump around in an environment, Sucker Punch took all those same mechanics and made everything a bit stealthier. Building off the pitch-perfect platforming of the original Sly Cooper, players could also take control of his teammates Bentley and Murray, each complete with their own abilities and skill sets to handle each new situation. They're not the only ones with some new tricks up their sleeve either, as now Sly can pickpocket coins or other valuable items from enemies without engaging them directly in combat. The levels themselves were also much more open, allowing players to tackle the numerous objectives in a much less linear fashion than its predecessor, with all the missions being planned out from a central hub that Sly and the crew return to between missions.
Come on, Sly, let's get out of here!
Psychonauts.
My name
starts with a D.
Is Rasputin.
Double Fine and Tim Schafer have a long and storied history of creating wildly fantastical worlds for players to explore, and Psychonauts is by far their most mind-bending. Stepping into the adolescent shoes of a would-be psychodet, Raz explores the training campgrounds of potential applicants and does basically whatever it takes to get inside their heads. Literally. By diving into the other characters' minds, the game is able to create some of the most varied and outlandish worlds players are ever likely to visit, and with Raz's psychic abilities, he's not without the means to defend himself against any horrors he might encounter within their psyche. Despite the game's admittedly cartoon aesthetic, it has a surprisingly mature storyline that manages to weave complicated issues into the game's narrative through the pursuit of emotional baggage that many of the characters suffer from.
I mean, what do I have to do to get those guys to take me seriously?
When are you going to shut up and kiss me?
I can hear that.
I know.
Jak and Daxter, the Precursor Legacy.
Okay. I'm fine.
From the studio that gave Sony their first unofficial mascot, Naughty Dog looked to expand on what they'd created with the Crash Bandicoot series with their first outing on the PS2, and the results were nothing short of remarkable. Featuring, for the time, unprecedented depth of field and a fully explorable world with no loading screens, Jak and Daxter jumped onto the PS2 and completely stuck the landing. While much of the game followed the tried and true platforming formula, complete with the genre's staple of themed levels such as fire, ice, and cave, the detailed and colorful sprites helped bring the cartoony world to life in a way few other titles ever had before. The oftentimes hilarious script and cast of instantly lovable characters didn't hurt either, especially the talkative Daxter, who easily could have been annoying but managed to endear himself to players with his clever quips and insights into the Precursor world.
But Daxter, now we can't change you back.
Don't worry about me, baby. You know what they say. Big things come in small packages.
Ratchet and Clank, up your arsenal.
It's a new sergeant!
Huh?
Hey, Sarge, you can have my gun. There's too many of them! We're all gonna die!
Much like the rivalry between Mario and Sonic in the 90s, Sony had their own platformer war waging on the PS2 between Jak and Daxter and Ratchet and Clank. And while both were beloved and well received, only one truly came out victorious and still continues even today. Whereas Jak had a bit of an identity crisis during his trilogy, Ratchet always knew he wanted to blow things up in the most outlandish ways imaginable, and Up Your Arsenal is still one of the best outings for the Lombax and his little robot pal. With more varied weapons, locations, and even brand new vehicles to control, Up Your Arsenal lived up to its name and delivered players more content than they knew what to do with, in addition to one of the best stories in the franchise.
Oh, the humiliation! Defeated by squishes! Oh, I'll never live this down!
What exactly do you know how to do? I can burp the alphabet. A, B, D. No, wait.
Teen Titans.
Somebody has made a video game starring us? How joyous!
Or not.
Let me take a look at the game.
Why should Batman get to have all the fun? Before the over-the-top Teen Titans Go, the teen team-up was more akin to Batman the Animated Adventures and was widely well-received by both fans and critics. So naturally, a video game outing starring the titular heroes was almost guaranteed. Playing more like Marvel Ultimate Alliance than the future Caped Crusaders outings, The heroes needed to battle their way out of a simulation after being sucked into a video game. Not the most original concept, but also within the realm of the show. Players could swap between any hero on the fly and use their various unique abilities to combat the many familiar foes the Titans had encountered throughout the series, unlocking up to 30 additional characters to battle their friends in PvP.
There's our villain. It was you, sending us on all those journeys, controlling us, making us do your bidding.
This is our tormentor?
The one sitting on the couch?
Star Trek Voyager Elite Force.
Mr. Monroe, we have isolated your team members' life signs. They appear to be trapped in the tertiary power modulation chamber. Rescue them at any cost.
Acknowledged.
Although not the first game to boldly go where no one has gone before, Star Trek Voyager Elite Force put players in the red shirt of a crew member unlike any Star Trek game before it. After the crew of the USS Voyager becomes lost within a ship graveyard in deep space, it's up to the player to set phasers to frag and keep the remaining crew safe from all manner of familiar alien threats, seizing the opportunity to invade the stranded Voyager ship. Certain enemies such as the Borg will adapt to the player's tactics and adjust their attacks accordingly. Players could even freely explore the Voyager ship in between missions, interacting with the many familiar characters from the beloved TV series. The attention to detail was a labor of love by the development team, and even the game's online multiplayer was built into the game as a holodeck simulation.
Thank you, sir. I was afraid you would think my decision was too impulsive.
Sometimes, Lieutenant, your gut instinct is better than what logic and procedure would suggest.
Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Hey, Appa! Katara said she would go penguin sledding with me before training today. See you later, boy!
Set during the events of Book 1, Avatar: The Last Airbender chronicles Aang's attempt to learn waterbending. The game deviates quite heavily from the show, allowing players to experience an almost alternate timeline and expanding on the series of events during Aang's waterbending training. Using an isometric perspective, Aang can be joined by Sokka and Katara as well as a number of companions during their attempts to stop the Fire Nation from creating yet another devastating new machine, and switch between any of them at will to use their various fighting styles and abilities during combat. The game was praised for maintaining the look and feel of the series as well as expanding on the lore and incorporating many of its fan-favorite characters.
Yeah, you like us when we're saving your butt.
What? I don't need my butt saved.
Futurama. Given how the numerous video game outings Matt Groening's first creation The Simpsons have had, it's a real shame the often cancelled and revived Futurama series only got one true video game offering. The entire game is set up as an episode of the show, with Professor Farnsworth selling Planet Express to Mom and her becoming the supreme ruler of Earth. It's then up to the Planet Express crew and their ever-increasingly outlandish attempts to stop her tyrannical reign. Much like many of The Simpsons' games, Futurama leans heavily into its video game tropes, even cleverly creating an in-universe reason for how Fry and crew can come back after dying in the game. The game's platforming and combat weren't revolutionary, but the use of Fry, Bender, and Leela's unique abilities kept gameplay from getting stale. The game even answered the question, why not Zoidberg, by giving the crustacean physician his own level.
Earth is all... And the other planets are like...
24, the game.
Bauer.
Jack, we've gotten word from DCCTU. There's going to be an assassination attempt on the Vice President sometime today.
The premise of 24 felt like a prime candidate for a video game adaptation, and Studio Cambridge thought so as well. As a result, Jack Bauer was sent on another mission that had to be resolved in only 24 hours, set between seasons 2 and 3 of the main series. Impressively, the game not only captured the look and feel of the series' multi-panel style, but also managed to get nearly the entire cast to reprise their roles. While third-person shooting is one of the main focuses, the game also includes several segments lifted straight from the series and adapted as minigames, such as code breaking and computer puzzles, as well as a fairly deep interrogation simulator in which Jack needs to maintain the suspect's stress level while choosing which way to approach the situation. With a scenario taken directly from the show, only Jack Bauer can put an end to the terrorists' ever-escalating schemes.
Everything's gonna be okay now.
Jack!
Ben 10, Protector of Earth.
It's hero time. Go mighty Omnitrix power?
The Ben 10 series is a cartoon that came out of nowhere and became a phenomenon for Cartoon Network, and with that eventually came the video game adaptation. Thankfully, Protector of Earth was no mere cash grab and utilized a 10-year-old boy's ability to turn into any one of 10 aliens using his Omnitrix watch to great effect. All the fan-favorite aliens are represented wonderfully using the game's cel-shaded art style, and as the game progresses, Ben can unlock more powers for each one, as well as the ability to remain in his alien form for longer periods for even more beat-em-up longevity. The game features drop in and out co-op, allowing another player to wield the power of the Omnitrix alongside Ben and take on the many familiar villains looking to reclaim it at any cost.
You two keep going. I'll catch up in a flash. And try not to embarrass me while I'm gone.
Battlestar Galactica.
This is Red Leader. We have jump coordinates locked in.
Copy that, Captain Lucas. You're clear for light speed.
Oddly enough, even though the Revival series also premiered in 2003, the game was based on the classic 1978 series. Although much of the series is based around the many characters' dynamics and relationships with one another in the middle of an alien invasion, the game takes the fight directly to the Cylons and relegates much of the gameplay to the cockpit. Taking things a step further than many traditional space shooters, Battlestar Galactica forces players to think more strategically and plan the most appropriate use for their finite energy reserve that is used for not only your ship's weapons, but also its maneuverability. It's this strategic thinking that is key to surviving your numerous encounters with the Cylon Raiders, because if you fail, you start the mission over from the very beginning, adding real consequences to your choices as progress of up to 20 minutes or more could be lost.
Excellent. Proceed to the second stage of the plan.
The X-Files: Resist or Serve.
You can't tell me teenage girls with a high school interest in the occult have somehow managed to raise the dead.
Hey, I've seen them do it on Buffy.
Mulder, stop!
If there was ever a series deserving of a video game adaptation, it's the X-Files. The series' cases are prime material for gamers to experience and unravel their mysteries, and with Resist or Serve, both fans and gamers got to experience a series of investigations created exclusively for the title. While not as dedicatedly authentic as 24 the game, Resist or Serve does an admirable job at putting players into the shoes of FBI agents Mulder and Scully, even if there is far more gunplay involved than there usually is within the TV series. Taking inspiration from the likes of Silent Hill and the Resident Evil series, players guide Mulder and Scully around environments with fixed camera angles, searching for clues and narrowly surviving encounters with various unnatural or paranormal creatures.
They're looking for any reason to shut you down.
What, does Kirsch have us on double secret probation?
If you won't listen to me as your superior, at least listen to me as a friend of you and of the X-Files.
Scooby-Doo! 100 Nights of Frights.
Gee, Scoob, it's not like they got your name all over them. Yeah, well, actually, they do. Scooby-Doo!
Ruh-roh! Shaggy and the rest of Mystery Inc. have been kidnapped, and it's up to Scooby to save them from the evil mastermind voiced by none other than Tim freaking Curry.
I'm the reason you're here.
You are?
Players take control of Scooby-Doo as he navigates a spooky mansion and several equally unsettling locations in search of his friends while scooping up as many Scooby snacks as Scooby possible. Scooby is also far more courageous than usual, going paw to paw with many of the game's monsters and collecting numerous gadgets and upgrades to progress through Mystic Manor. The series' iconic art style translates well to 100 Nights of Fright, and the game's story features numerous callbacks and in-jokes for longtime fans, while also telling a wholly original tale for Mystery Inc. to investigate.
Well, it was a good plan.
Yeah, and I would have gotten away with it too, if not for you meddling kids and your pesky dog.
Huh?
Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Chaos Bleeds.
A surprise party. Whose idea was this? I'll kill ya. Not that I don't appreciate the thought, but who invited the vampires?
If you thought navigating high school was difficult, be happy you didn't also have to contend with vampires, demons, and zombies from an alternate reality that also happens to resurrect foes long since dead. Taking place during the show's 5th season, Buffy and her friends have had more than their share of supernatural events to contend with, so thankfully, they're more than prepared as players take control of not only Buffy, but also Willow, Xander, and even Spike in addition to others, with many having entire chapters of the game dedicated to their adventures during the overall narrative. Chaos Bleeds was praised for not only its faithfulness to the source material, but also its realistic and varied combat as well. The game even featured a robust multiplayer offering where players could unlock additional characters, and was so well received it even earned its own limited run tie-in comic book series.
So what now? How do we get back?
It will happen on its own. I can feel this place unraveling.
We've got an extremely delicate mission for you, if you're interested.
Mm-hmm. Always interested. Just send me the briefing.
Second Sight.
Dr. Vatic.
What happened? I need to remember.
Unlike the similar telekinetic experience PsyOps the Mindgate conspiracy, Second Sight scaled things back and rewarded the player for approaching each encounter more strategically or using their powers to avoid combat altogether. Focusing more on puzzle solving rather than outright combat, players can use their psychic abilities to avoid detection from patrols and security cameras, but if necessary, can knock out guards with a handy tranquilizer gun. Should encounters get too intense, players can use their abilities to heal themselves while they retreat and wait out the encroaching patrols. Players have access to a wealth of combat weapons and close-quarter takedowns, but using your psychic abilities and taking things stealthy should always be your first option, lest you end up back on the operating table. Deus Ex.
We're taking a minimum force approach. We're cops after all.
Ask me. I think we should frag them all. You trespass on UNATCO property, you get pumped full of lead.
Many games offer the player freedom of choice, but none do it better than Deus Ex. Players are able to approach nearly every single situation in whatever way they choose, from diplomacy and the ability to talk their way out of encounters entirely, to heavy assault where you bring your full arsenal and let your bullets do the talking. Many players, however, would choose the stealthier approach, and the game accommodated them completely. With numerous vents and other entry points to choose from, those looking to avoid encounters entirely had a wealth of options to choose from and could invest as many skill points into their stealth tree as they wanted. The game would also encourage this approach, with much of the story reacting to how players approached each mission, completely affecting the overall narrative based on their choices, as well as how violent they were throughout the game.
Here comes your chance to be a hero.
James Bond 007, Everything or Nothing.
You're awfully sure of yourself, aren't you?
Well, I find that a positive outlook is helpful in our line of work. Don't you agree?
The world's best British secret agent knows a thing or two about how to approach a situation with style, and there's nothing more stylish than infiltrating undetected and slipping out the back before they even knew you were there. 007 would be nothing without his gadgets, and luckily Q has more than enough to keep Bond well prepared for any scenario. The third-person perspective allows Bond to take cover, and along with Q's Q-Spider, you can quickly dispatch whole groups of enemies by sending the little mine through the vents and catching a group of guards completely by surprise. Bond has never been one to go in guns blazing, and Everything or Nothing's enemy AI will quickly send Bond to early retirement should he get careless. The best spy is a cautious spy, after all.
Oh, James. What was that for?
Call it a hint of bigger things to come.
Manhunt.
I'll try to direct you as best I can, but other than that, you're on your own. It's up to you. Okay, are you ready? Camera, action.
While all the games on this list make stealth their primary focus gameplay-wise, none take it as deadly serious as Manhunt. In other stealth games, stealth is not the only option, and you are still the danger for many of the enemies you encounter. In Manhunt, however, Rockstar set out to make sure that if you attempt to approach things in any way but slow and methodical, you'll most certainly be the victim. It's all too easy to become overwhelmed, even against only a couple combatants, so keeping to the shadows and choosing the best moment to strike is key to survival. Players are encouraged to take as much time as possible with their stealth kills using a myriad of impromptu weapons on hand, and are ranked for their efforts at the end of the level.
You've left your old life, your old self behind.
Siphon Filter, Logan's Shadow.
Alright, I'll do it. But I
No,
use...
Gabe, what are you doing? This is incredible.
I use my people. Logan out.
Although Snake was the more prominent figure in stealth in the early days of PlayStation, there was another hero sneakily working his way through the shadows of Metal Gear. Gabe Logan's exploits were always a bit more action-heavy than Snake's, but that doesn't mean he can't take things a bit quieter. Taking cues from the Solid Man himself, Gabe could now move from cover to cover, as well as blind fire around corners and even take hostages to use as human shields. While not every mission called for it, the stealthy approach usually incurred less resistance during missions. One new aspect Gabe brought to the table himself was underwater combat and exploration, which opens up all new infiltration possibilities. Gabe's trusty taser makes a return, but most players would find themselves using the far quicker and quieter CQC mechanics and knife kills.
It's time to move on. Look up the kid. Try something else for a while. The business requires too many secrets.
Sly 2, Band of Thieves.
We ran into a few problems along the way, but pushed on.
Not every stealth game needs to take a serious approach to sneaking around in the shadows. The Thievius Raccoonus is back for his second and arguably best adventure, and he's bringing a whole new bag of tricks along with him. Just like the first entry, players are encouraged to guide Sly around his environments by sticking to the shadows as much as possible. Enemies will now even chase Sly onto rooftops, often forcing him to engage in open combat, but Sly comes equipped with new gadgets to lose his pursuers, including smoke grenades to cover his escape. While Bentley and Murray have also joined the lineup this time around, the focus is still very much on Sly and making the best use of his sneaking skills around some of the series' most vibrantly detailed environments.
You really should watch where you're going. This place is dangerous.
Tenchu, Wrath of Heaven. When discussing those who work within the shadows, there are no greater masters of stealth than ninjas, and Tenchu Wrath of Heaven gave players all the tools of a ninja and set them loose across the rooftops of feudal Japan. With a full ninja arsenal at their disposal, and featuring 2 separate campaigns, players can engage in open combat, but are encouraged to keep to the shadows and are rewarded points that can be used to unlock better and more powerful ninja equipment to bring into each new level. As the game progresses, all your ninja skills are put to the test, as there will be other ninjas that know all of your moves and can even stealth one-shot you if you let your guard down. Published by From Software in Japan, the Tenchu series' influence can still be felt today in FromSoft's own Sekiro series.
Don't press your luck. You're still no match for me, little one.
Hitman Blood Money.
You forgot your tip.
That's all right.
I insist. On the table by the bathroom.
Scientifically created specifically to be invisible, Agent 47 epitomizes the modern stealth genre, and one of his best contracts was Blood Money on the PS2. A master of disguise, regardless of the bald head and barcode, Agent 47 is able to become almost anyone in pursuit of his target. Blood Money gave 47 access to all new mechanics to aid him in his contracts, such as improvised weaponry, body disposal, and the ability to reduce his own notoriety within the level by destroying the surveillance equipment that unfortunately caught a glimpse of him. Although a full frontal assault is possible, 47 is encouraged to make every assassination look like an accident and disappear without a trace. Much of what makes 47 the effective assassin he continues to be today all began with his Blood Money contract.
I'm looking forward to finally working with you.
I'll contact you if I need more information. Beyond that, never contact me in person again.
Splinter Cell: Chaos Theory.
Nice night.
Splinter Cell introduced players to one of the most realistic stealth experiences possible at the time with Sam Fisher and his hallway splits. Chaos Theory took the foundation of the first game and took things even further. Besides the standard light detection meter, players also had to be concerned with how much noise they were making as they crouch walked around, but could make use of ambient noise to mask their own approach and takedowns. Players were also given more freedom in how they approach each mission, with each giving them one of 3 kit options to take with them. Enemies would also now do sweeps of the area searching for bodies that could trigger alarms, eventually leading to a mission failure should you have gotten careless. Sam Fisher and Splinter Cell represent some of the best the stealth genre has to offer, but there once was another.
I've heard they don't make them like me anymore. There was this other guy, though. Army infiltration. He wore a bandana or something.
I heard he finally retired.
Really?
Yep.
It's only me.
Metal Gear Solid 3: Snake Eater. From the mastermind creator of the stealth genre itself, Hideo Kojima's third entry into the Metal Gear Solid series was and still is one of his best. While the previous 2 entries were set in more industrial and modern playgrounds, Snake Eater takes things a bit more primal by dropping Naked Snake into the jungle and forcing him to survive using only what he can find. Stealth played a much more prominent role in Snake Eater than ever before, as players needed to constantly change up their camouflage to blend in with their surroundings. With fewer over-the-top action moments, although there were still plenty, this is Kojima after all, the focus was purely on the stealth aspect this time around, and players could even complete the entire game undetected using the game's mechanics, built specifically allowing them to do so.
I never knew your name was Herman.
Oh no, it's you!
Well, you are kind of in my neighborhood, Herman.
X-Men Origins: Wolverine. Just because the movie was disappointing doesn't mean the game has to be. Largely following the same plot as the film, as the Wolverine, players are set loose to unleash their fury on anything and everything standing in their way. While some caveats had to be made to release the game on the PS2, largely in the graphical department, X-Men Origins Wolverine on the PS2 remains mostly the same game as its next-gen counterparts. Sadly, one of the main features of the PS3 and Xbox 360 versions of the game, namely the amount of blood and gore, were severely toned down for the PS2 version, especially when it came to Logan's healing factor. However, even despite these shortcomings, X-Men Origins Wolverine remains one of the best solo outings for the famed X-Man, at least until Insomniac's entry eventually releases.
I've always been Wolverine, and I've always been alone. I'll probably be alone till the day I die.
Batman: Rise of Sin Tzu.
Commissioner. Batman, there's been a riot at Stonegate Prison. Escaping criminals are flooding the city and attacking innocent citizens.
Batman has certainly had no shortage of video games throughout his storied history, and while most were either passable or downright abysmal before Rocksteady's Arkham series, there still managed to be a couple worth fans' time on the PS2. Taking place in the same universe as the animated series The New Batman Adventures, and even including the cast from the show, players can take on new villain Sin Tzu solo as Batman, or with a friend as part of the Bat Fam, button mashing and beating up every thug and member of his rogues gallery standing between them, and ending Sin Tzu's evil schemes for Gotham. While the game wasn't revolutionary, it was still a solid experience filled with callbacks for fans of the series, and although critics might have been mixed upon its release, Bat fans found a lot to love fighting their way through the crime-riddled streets of Gotham.
I understand. We all have to honor our vows. To the living and to the dead.
Ultimate Spider-Man.
Is that a rhinoceros horn, or you just happy to see? I am so scared I can't even finish my lame joke.
No doubt overshadowed by Treyarch's other web-swinging tie-in, and based on one of the most popular modern adaptations of Spidey's adventures, Ultimate Spider-Man is one of the best and also most overlooked of Spidey's many video game outings. Treyarch's use of cell shading made the pages of the comic come to life, and even managed to incorporate the panels of the comic into the game's mini cutscenes, letting the player feel like they were playing a story lifted straight from the pages of the popular graphic novel. This time around, players took control of not only Peter/Spidey, but also Venom, attempting to stay ahead of Trask Industries trying to capture him. While the swinging might not have been as wide open as in Treyarch's previous wall-crawling adventure, Ultimate Spider-Man features a much more cohesive story, as well as better combat and upgrades, and numerous cameos from many fan-favorite characters. Justice League Heroes.
I don't remember asking for any help.
Well, since I'm here anyway.
For as perfect a scenario as it is to team up with the Justice League to battle the many forces of evil, there aren't as many group video game outings as you'd think, let alone any worth playing. Players have access to the full roster of the Justice League, pairing up the likes of Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, and others in either single-player or co-op gameplay that sees them battle against the forces of Brainiac and Darkseid. The game might use the familiar beat-em-up style gameplay, but the various powers of each hero and the combinations players can create, as well as customization options for each hero, keep the repetitive action from getting dull, along with a surprisingly stacked voice cast that keeps the story engrossing throughout.
You think you'll ever escape again?
Doesn't matter. We're here.
The Punisher.
They've given me a reason to live. I'm back. And it's their turn to die.
If ever a superhero was a prime candidate for a third-person shooter, The Punisher was long overdue. Loosely based on the 2004 film, complete with Thomas Jane reprising his role of Frank Castle, albeit strangely without his chiseled good looks for some reason, the Punisher game became notorious for its interrogation scenes, which allowed players to question suspects using various objects in the environment to encourage their cooperation, and even almost earn the game the dreaded adults-only rating. The game also incorporates other villains into the story such as Kingpin and Bullseye, as well as an unexpected cameo from Nick Fury. The game received mixed reviews from critics, but fans were immediately enamored with the comic-accurate portrayal of one of Marvel's favorite anti-heroes, even if you did fail the level for killing innocent civilians.
The official story is that it was a planned French test on an uninhabited island.
It's uninhabited now.
Marvel vs. Capcom 2: New Age of Heroes. Superheroes duking it out in comics and video games is nothing new, but few have managed to capture the power and spirit of the crossover like Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Using a tag team approach, players can load up their roster with any combination of fighters they desire and unleash their powers on the many fighters and characters from Capcom's own extensive catalog. The game's hand-drawn graphical style made the game feel like every fan's versus fantasies come to life, and the battles would often devolve into frantic battles of each player unleashing their ultimate hyper combo attack and completely changing the outcome of a fight. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is widely considered not only one of the best superhero games, but also one of the best 2D fighting games of all time, and its roster of playable characters remains unrivaled even by its own sequel, Marvel Ultimate Alliance.
Spider-Man, draw them towards the stern.
Sure thing. I just love being the target.
Wolverine,
You
do
go
it, Boy Scout. I don't take orders from you.
Although both Marvel Ultimate Alliance and Justice League Heroes were released within months of each other in 2006, the Justice League just couldn't compete with the absolutely stacked roster Ultimate Alliance offered players. Featuring 22 playable characters from X-Men to Avengers and everything in between, Ultimate Alliance allowed players to build their own team of 4 to tackle objectives, and players were even rewarded with bonuses for recreating famous team-ups such as the Fantastic Four or the X-Men. Coupled with a plot that saw the many heroes taking on some of the most dangerous and recognizable villains in Marvel's extensive library, every hero's powers were perfectly recreated, and with up to 4 playable characters on a team, Marvel Ultimate Alliance remains one of the best cooperative experiences on the PS2.
But if a threat like this comes again, can S.H.I.E.L.D. count on your help? The world can count on us, sir.
Spider-Man 2.
Wait, what's your name?
Me? I'm Black Cat, and I just crossed your path. Now, if you'll excuse me.
Prior to Insomniac taking a swing at the wall crawler in 2018, this was the pinnacle of Spider-Man games, and every subsequent open-world Spidey game owes their web-swinging mechanics to the movie tie-in for Spider-Man 2. Utilizing a system that forced the webs to actually attach to a surface, what a novel concept, we know, web swinging felt better than ever as players zipped around a fully open New York to their heart's content. While Spider-Man 2 mostly followed the plot of the film, it expanded on the narrative by also introducing other fan-favorite villains and characters such as Mysterio and Black Cat. Players were given an enormous playground in which to live out their Spidey dreams, with no shortage of optional objectives and random events to keep a Spider-Man busy. Gamers made the most out of their newfound powers, and we promise, always use them responsibly.
No shooting.
Whoa, that was sick, dude.
Lego Batman, the video game. Traveler's Tales are masters of taking a property that doesn't seem to fit into the Legoverse and turning it into one of the best adaptations of the property. Long before Lego Batman made his debut on the big screen, players were exploring the crafted world of Gotham and throwing punches while building many of Batman's famous gadgets out of Lego bricks. Players can traverse Gotham solo or with a member of the Bat Fam, and even many of the villains as Batman attempts to thwart the plans of his greatest foes while the villains try to stay one step ahead of the world's greatest detective. Along with the trademark humor fans had come to expect from the Lego games, the Lego Batman game is also notable as it's Traveler's Tales' very first original story not based on an existing adaptation. The Incredible Hulk, Ultimate Destruction.
You're not going to find a cure for the Hulk out there by yourself.
Hey, you worry too much. Nobody knows I'm here.
Hello, Dr. Banner.
The ultimate power fantasy for the most powerful Avenger, Hulk Ultimate Destruction lived up to its title by letting Hulk smash everything standing in Hulk's way. Be it buildings, cars, tanks, helicopters, or innocent bystanders, were no match for Hulk's unbridled destruction, and some debris such as cars or buses could even be used by the Hulk to further his destructive tendencies. With Thunderbolt Ross, the military, as well as Abomination all hot on the Hulk's trail, Ultimate Destruction becomes more than a tagline as the Hulk leaps and bounds from one environment to the next, leaving nothing but catastrophe in his wake. Featuring a level of destruction still impressive even by today's standards, players could completely level an area down to rubble if they wanted to, unleashing their own rage, all while trying to stay one step ahead of the world hunting them down. Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from MojoPlays, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.